Okay guys, welcome back. So the activity that we are working on today is ballasting the 6495 so it can work appropriately. So we are going to fill out a sheet just like this for the 6495. And I'll try and zoom in here a little bit so you can read it. So there is a correct weight to horsepower ratio, and this worksheet is the one that I did. You can see there it was for the 6180, and you can get these online. They're from the, where are they from? Titan Tire, and I'm trying to think. It's Titan International, and then there's a weight and load chart thing that you can download a PDF. So this is the chart that I did for the 6180. There is a reason that my 6180, which has 115 horsepower there, you can see the 115 horsepower number there. There's a reason that it was able to pull the 22-foot field cultivator, the heavy Kraus field cultivator, and that was because I did this chart. It's a ratio that you figure out, and basically, to make a long story short, you can see that line right in the center of the screen there. It says weight should be approximately somewhere in the area of 130 pounds per PTO horsepower. So the 6495, we're in the process of doing this same sheet on the 6495. So when I drove home after the transmission repair the other day, we ran across the scale, and the tractor with no front weights on and no rear weights other than the cast wheels was weighing right at 17.4. And so we know that we have somewhere between 155 and 165 PTO horsepower, and so using the math in there, we need to be somewhere in the area of 21,000 pounds on the tractor. And so how do we get that? Well, we started on a journey, and this is the first part of that journey. Well, actually, I probably ought to rewind a little bit more. So the first part of that journey is the very easy step, and that's right there. It's putting the front rack of weights back on. I left two of the front rack off because I want access to my pulling pin there, and you know, I may have to put them on to make the numbers come out right at the end, but we'll work with that. So the first part is ballasting the front. The second part is what we went to the tractor salvage yard and bought, and I teased you guys with a picture of it the other day, but we went to the tractor salvage yard, and I had hoped that the old style of Massey weight would go on this tractor. So Massey, you know, in the 1100 series made an inner wheel weight, and I was hopeful that those weights would go on. They're a beautiful weight. They were used on a bunch of tractors, and that was also how I got the 6180 ballasted. But unfortunately, even though we have the same hole pattern here, we have the same Massey triangular pattern, 17¼ inches to spread on those holes, we have a dish there. And so the weight needs to reset into the wheel. And the 1100 weights, while they would bolt on, there would have been a gap here because they would have bolted flat to this surface. And that was not very desirable. Plus you would have had a lot of modification. So luckily the tractor salvage yard had this weight. And if you look at the profile of this weight, it has a significant dish that allows it to set down inside that wheel. Unfortunately, you know, I'm not sure which Massey this came off of, but it had these shoulders right here. And in order for the weight to set down in the wheel, that shoulder had to be cut. And so that's what I was doing yesterday when the weather was nice. It was a little bit tricky but I had to make a couple modifications here. One was cutting off that shoulder, and I did that with an angle grinder, just grinding into the weight to the depth of my blade. And then I hit it with a hammer and broke it. And then I proceeded to sand it. And so this weight did take several modifications. That was one, taking the shoulder off, and the other one was this cut here. I had to make that cut there, which corresponds to this edge right here of the wheel, so that it could get full amount of recess. And anyway, that's what we have done so far. And last night Dane was coming home and we were about ready to put it in, and then we just simply ran out of time. So what we need to do now to continue the process is we need to dry fit the weight one time and make sure our modifications are right, and we need to paint it, and then we need to put it on. And so at that point in time, then we will go back down to the scale and we will weigh the tractor again. And there is a correct front to back ratio, and there is a correct weight amount for your horsepower. And so that is what we are working towards, and it's a process, but we are making progress. And so that weight there, another question people have asked me, you know, that weight there is pushing 1,100 pounds. Time I get my modifications done and get my stuff cut off, it will still be 1,100 pounds. Okay guys, so now I'm back in the other office. The weather has taken a definite turn for the worse, and so I'm back into the heated office. So here is our worksheet that we have so far for the 6495. When I use PTO horsepower numbers, I'm not using just guesses or what the manufacturer said. So I like to use the Nebraska test, and what we have there is the Nebraska test for the 6495 diesel, and what we see there under standard PTO and maximum power PTO 165, 166. So that is the number that I'm plugging into that sheet at the top. I also said, you know, that 130 is the right there in the center of the screen. 130 is kind of the target that we're going for, and that's 130 pounds per horsepower. And so that gives us a theoretical target of 21,450. So in doing my math the other day, you know, I told you the tractor weighed 17,400 when I drove it home with no ballast. I also want to say that the fuel tank was, it was not very full either. That has a big fuel tank on it. Don't think it's 100 gallons, might be 90 gallons, but anyway, there was probably only 20 gallons of diesel in it. But the tractor, without any ballast at all, was 17,400. And the 2,200 pound rear weights that I put on, and then putting pretty much a full rack on the front, that's another 1,000. And so we're going to be pushing the 20,600 with an empty fuel tank. And so when we fill up the fuel tank, we should at least be over the 21,000. So we'll be somewhere between 120 and 130 pounds per horsepower. Then the question is that front and back brake? And we don't know that until we get the tractor ballasted and we run the weights. So in that book, I downloaded that Optimum, I'll zoom right in, TitanInternational.com. That's where you get these tractor guides. But a thing I want to point out there is that right there. So it says soil compaction will be reduced since the average soil contact pressure under a radial tire is approximately equal to the inflation pressure plus 1 or 2 psi. Thus, lower inflation equals less compaction. So the trick is to get as much pulling out of that given horsepower by using weight, and then have your tire pressure set as low as possible, adjusted for the weight, in order to reduce compaction, you know, increasing the footprint of that radial tire. And so we are making wonderful progress, and we will continue on.